David's apartment building looked ordinary from the outside. Red brick walls, small windows, and a door that needed painting. But to Lisa, sitting in the passenger seat of his Honda, it looked like a castle. She hadn't been inside a real home. In 3 months, it's not much, David said as he parked the car. Just a one-bedroom place on the 3rd floor. But it's warm and clean. Lisa nodded, still holding the bag of bread tightly. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from the cold, it was from fear. What if this was all a trick? What if David wasn't the kind person he seemed to be? She had learned a hard way that not everyone who offered help actually wanted to help. They climbed the narrow stairs slowly. Lisa's legs felt weak from not eating properly for days. The bread in the bag smelled amazing, but she was saving it. Food was too precious. To eat all at once. You never knew when the next meal would come. David's apartment was small but cozy. A brown couch sat in front of an old television. The kitchen was tiny, with just enough space for one person to cook. Books were scattered on a coffee table, and there were photos on the walls of David with what looked like his family. The bathroom is right there, David said, pointing to a door near the kitchen. And the bedroom is over here, but you don't need to worry about that. The couch pulls out into a bed. Lisa stood in the middle of the living room, not sure what to do. Everything felt surreal. Just 2 hours ago, she had been sitting behind a dumpster, wondering if she would survive another night on the streets. She was standing in a warm apartment with a man who seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. "Are you hungry?" David asked. "I mean, besides the bread? I could make you something hot." Lisa's stomach made a loud rumbling sound that answered for her. She felt her face turn red with embarrassment, but David just smiled. "I'll take that as a yes," he said, walking toward the kitchen. "How about some soup? I think I have tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. Sound good?" "You don't have to do all this," Lisa said quietly. "The bread is enough. More than enough." David stopped and turned to look at her. "Lisa, when was the last time you had a hot meal?" She thought about it, really thought about it. "Maybe 2 weeks ago. There was a church that was serving lunch, but I was too late. Hey, they had some leftover rolls, though." David's face grew serious. 2 weeks? You haven't eaten a proper meal in 2 weeks? Lisa shrugged like it wasn't a big deal, but inside she felt ashamed. She remembered when 2 hours without food used to feel like forever. Now 2 weeks seemed normal. "Sit down," David said gently. "Please, let me make you some real food." Lisa sat on the edge of the couch, still wearing David's leather jacket. She was afraid to get too comfortable, afraid to believe this was really happening. Good things didn't happen to people like her anymore. From the kitchen, she could hear David moving around, opening cans and turning on the stove. The sounds were so normal, so peaceful. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the last time she had felt safe. It had been so long that the memory felt like something from someone else's life. So David called from the kitchen, "How long have you been? How long have you been on your own?" Lisa knew what he was really asking. "How long have you been homeless?" The word felt heavy, like something she didn't want to admit about herself. 3 months, she said. "Since August." "That must be really hard," David said. His voice was kind, not judgmental, especially with winter coming. Lisa felt tears starting again. She had cried more tonight than she had in weeks. On the streets, crying was dangerous. It showed weakness, and weak people didn't survive. But here, in David's warm apartment, the tears felt safe somehow. "I never thought this would happen to me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to have plans. I was going to college. I had dreams." David appeared in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, a wooden spoon in his hand. "What happened? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But sometimes talking helps." Lisa looked at him, really looked at him. David was probably in his late 20s, with kind eyes and an honest face. He worked at a bakery, lived in a simple apartment, and had just given a stranger his jacket and offered her food and shelter. Either he was the nicest person in the world, or he was very good at pretending. "My parents died in a car accident last year," Lisa said slowly. "I was in college studying to be a social worker. I wanted to help people, But after they died, I couldn't focus on anything. My grades dropped, and I lost my scholarship." David came back into the living room and sat in a chair across from her. He didn't say anything, just listened. I had to drop out of school. Tried to keep their house, but I couldn't afford the payments. Got a job at a restaurant, but it wasn't enough. Then I got sick and missed too much work, so they fired me. Lisa wiped her eyes with the sleeve of the jacket. Everything just fell apart so fast. I'm sorry, David said, and he meant it. That's incredibly unfair. Then I met someone, Lisa continued. A guy named Tony. He said he loved me, said he would take care of me, but he didn't take care of me. He hurt me. And when I finally got brave enough to leave him, I had nothing. I had no money, no place to go, no family left to call. David felt anger, rising in his chest, but not at Lisa. At Tony, at the unfair world that had put this kind young woman through so much pain. So I've been living on the streets since then, Lisa finished. Trying to stay alive, trying to stay safe. Some days are better than others. The smell of tomato soup filled the apartment, and David realized he had been so focused on Lisa's story that he had forgotten about the food. The soup, said, jumping up and running to the kitchen. A few minutes later, David returned with a tray, a bowl of hot tomato soup, a grilled cheese sandwich cut in half, and a glass of cold milk. To Lisa, it looked like the most beautiful meal she'd ever seen. Thank you, she whispered, taking the tray with shaking hands. The first spoonful of soup was like heaven. Warm, creamy, perfect. Lisa tried to eat slowly, but her body wanted to gulp everything down at once. She had forgotten how good real food could taste. David watched her eat, and his heart broke a little more with each bite. This young woman, who should be in college or starting her career, was grateful for a simple bowl of soup like it was a 5-star meal. Lisa, David said after she had finished eating, I want you to know something. You're going to stay here tonight, and you're going to be safe. No one is going to hurt you, and no one is going to ask you for anything in return. This is just one person helping another person, okay? Lisa nodded, but David could see she was still scared. I know you probably have reasons not to trust people, David continued, and I understand that. But I need you to know that I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to ask you for anything. I just want you to get some rest and be warm. Why? Lisa asked. Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me. David thought about her question. It was the same thing she had asked in the alley, but now, after hearing her story, the answer felt even more important. Because everyone deserves kindness, he said simply. Everyone deserves to be treated like they matter. And you matter. Lisa, what happened to you wasn't fair, and you didn't deserve any of it. Lisa started crying again, but this time they were different tears. Not tears of desperation or fear, but tears of relief. For the first time in months, someone had seen her as a human being instead of a problem to be avoided. Davy went to a closet and pulled out some blankets and a pillow. He showed Lisa how the couch folded out into a bed and made sure she had everything she needed. The bathroom is right there if you want to clean up, he said. There are clean towels in the cabinet, and you can use whatever you need. I'm going to go to bed now, but if you need anything during the night, just knock on my door, okay? Lisa nodded, still overwhelmed by his kindness. David, she called as he started toward his bedroom. Yeah, thank you. Really, you saved my life tonight. David smiled. Get some rest, Lisa. Tomorrow is a new day. As David lay in his bed that night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lisa's story, about how quickly someone's life could change. 3 months ago, she had been a college student with dreams and plans. Tonight she was sleeping on his couch, grateful for a bowl of soup and a warm place to rest. He thought about all the times he had walked past homeless people without really seeing them. How many of them had stories like Lisa's? How many of them had just been unlucky, victims of circumstances beyond their control? In the living room, Lisa lay awake too. The couch was more comfortable than anything she had slept on in months, but comfort felt strange now. For something bad to happen, for David to change his mind or reveal his true intentions. But as the hours passed and nothing bad happened, Lisa began to relax. Maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. Maybe David really was just a kind person who wanted to help. For the first time in months, Lisa fell asleep feeling safe. The clock on the bakery wall showed 11:30 p.m. when David finally turned off the last oven. Another long day was over, but he didn't mind. Working at Miller's Bakery had given him something most people take for granted: purpose. Every morning, he watched customers smile when they smelled fresh bread. Every evening, he made sure nothing went to waste. Tonight was no different. David gathered the leftover loaves into 2 large paper bags. Tomorrow's breakfast for the shelter on Oak Street, he thought to himself. This had become his routine over the past 6 months. The shelter director, Mrs. Peterson, always welcomed the donation with grateful eyes. The November wind hit his face. As he stepped outside, winter was coming early this year, and the streets felt colder than usual. David pulled his jacket tighter and started walking toward his old Honda in the parking lot behind the building. That's when he heard it, a soft coughing sound coming from near the dumpster. At first, he thought it might be a stray cat. The alley behind the bakery was always full of them, looking for scraps. But as he got closer, he realized it wasn't an animal at all. A young woman sat hunched against the brick wall, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her long brown hair fell like a curtain over her face, but David could see she was shivering. Her clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks, and her shoes had holes that let the cold concrete touch her feet. David stopped walking. Something in his chest tightened. He had seen homeless people before, of course. Who hadn't? But usually they were asking for money on busy street corners or sitting outside grocery stores. This was different. This woman was trying to hide, trying to disappear into the shadows. For a moment, neither of them moved. David stood there with his bags of bread, unsure what to do. The woman seemed to sense his presence and slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met his, and David felt his heart skip a beat. Those eyes told a story he didn't want to imagine. They were the eyes of someone who had given up hope but was still fighting to survive. Dark circles underneath showed she hadn't slept properly in days, maybe weeks. But what struck David most was how young she looked. She couldn't be older then. 25. I'm sorry, she whispered, starting to stand up. I'll move. I didn't mean to bother anyone. Her voice was so quiet David almost missed the words. But something in her tone made him want to help rather than walk away. This wasn't someone looking for trouble. Wait. This was someone in trouble. Wait, David said, surprising himself.
Ow, you don't have to go anywhere.
The woman froze, one hand against the wall for support. She looked at him with confusion, as if kindness was a language she had forgotten how to understand. Are you hungry? David asked, holding up one of the paper bags. I have some bread here. It's fresh from today. The woman's eyes moved to the bag, and David saw something change in her expression. Hunger. Real, desperate hunger. But instead of reaching for the food, she did something that broke David's heart. She looked down at her torn jeans and dirty shirt, then back at him. I don't have any money, she said slowly, but maybe we could work something out. The way she said those last words made David's stomach turn. He understood what she was suggesting, and it made him feel sick. Not because of her, but because of what the world had done to her. What kind of life had pushed this young woman to think that was her only option? No, David said quickly, but his voice was gentle. No, you don't understand. I'm not asking for anything. I'm just offering you some food because you look hungry. The woman stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You want nothing. Back? Nothing, David confirmed. He stepped closer and held out the bag. Take it, please. She reached out slowly, as if the bag might disappear if she moved too fast. When her fingers touched the paper, David noticed how thin her hands were. Her fingernails were dirty, and there were small cuts on her knuckles from who knows what. Thank you, she whispered, clutching the bag against her chest, like it was made of gold. But David wasn't done. As she held the bread, he noticed she was shaking, not just from hunger, but from the cold. The temperature had dropped since the sun went down, and she was wearing nothing but a thin sweater over her shirt. Without thinking about it, David started taking off his jacket. It was his favorite one, a thick brown leather jacket his brother had given him for his birthday 2 years ago. But looking at this woman, he knew she needed it more than he did. Here, he said, holding it out to her. You're freezing. The woman's eyes went wide. I can't take your jacket. You'll be cold. I have a car with heat, David said with a small smile. Don't, please, take it. She set the bag of bread down carefully and let David help her into the jacket. It was too big for her small frame, but it would keep her warm. As she zipped it up, David saw tears forming in her eyes. Why are you being so nice to me? She asked. You don't even know me. David thought about that question. Why was he helping her? He could have walked past the dumpster and never looked back. He could have minded his own business like most people do. But something about this moment felt important, like it was a test of who he really was. Because you're a person, he said finally. People should help each other. The woman started crying then. Not loud sobs, but quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks. David wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but he didn't know if that was true. He didn't know her story or how she had ended up here. What's your name? He asked softly. Lisa, she said, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of his jacket. Lisa Rodriguez. I'm David Chen. He looked around the empty alley, then back. At her? Lisa, do you have somewhere to sleep tonight? Somewhere warm? Lisa shook her head. I usually try to find an all-night restaurant or something. Somewhere I can sit until morning. The thought of her walking the streets all night in this cold made David's chest hurt. Before he could stop himself, the words came out of his mouth. Would you like to sleep on my couch tonight? Lisa looked at him with shock. What? I have a small apartment about 10 minutes from here, David explained quickly. I have a couch, and it's warm. You could get some real sleep. Maybe take a shower if you want. I don't understand, Lisa said, shaking her head. Why would you do that? You don't know anything about me. I could be dangerous. David looked at this young woman who probably weighed less than half what he did, wearing his jacket and holding a bag of age-old bread like it was treasure. Dangerous?
Oh.
The only thing dangerous about this situation was how quickly she could freeze to death if she spent another night outside. You're not dangerous, David said with certainty. You're just someone who needs help, and I can help. Lisa was quiet for a long time, thinking. David could see the war happening behind her eyes. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to trust him, but another part was scared, suspicious. She had probably learned not to trust people, especially men who offered help. I promise you'll be safe, David added. I just want to help you get through tonight. Tomorrow, you can decide what you want to do next. Finally, Lisa nodded. Okay, she said quietly. But if you try anything, I won't, David said firmly. I give you my word. As they walked toward his car, David wondered what he was getting himself into. He had never done anything like this before. But looking at Lisa, wrapped in his jacket and carrying the bread like it was the most valuable thing in the world, he knew he had made the right choice. Sometimes he thought, being human means taking chances on other humans. The Honda started on the second try, and soon they were driving through the quiet streets toward David's apartment. Lisa sat in the passenger seat, still clutching the bag of bread, watching the world go by through the window. Neither of them knew it yet, but this ride would change both of their lives forever. Lisa woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Soft couch, the warm blanket, the sounds of someone cooking breakfast. It all felt like a dream. Then reality came flooding back. She was in David's apartment. A stranger had taken her in and given her shelter. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and Lisa realized she had slept for almost 10 hours straight. Real sleep, not the light dozing she did on the streets, where every sound could mean danger. Her body felt different, rested in a way she had forgotten was possible. Good morning, David called from the kitchen. How did you sleep? Lisa sat up slowly, running her hands through her tangled hair. Better than I have in months, she admitted. Thank you. David appeared with a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. I hope you're hungry. I might have made too much food. Lisa's eyes filled with tears again. 2 real meals in less than 12 hours felt like a miracle. You don't have to keep feeding me, she said. You've already done so much. Everyone needs breakfast, David said simply, setting the plate on the coffee table. Besides, I like cooking for people. It makes me feel useful. As Lisa ate, David sat across from her with his own plate and a cup of coffee. The morning felt peaceful, normal in a way that scared Lisa a little. Normal wasn't something she could afford to get used to. David, she said between bites. What do you do? I mean, besides work at the bakery. David smiled. Not much, really. I work, I read, I watch movies. Pretty boring life, actually. What about you? I mean, before everything happened. Lisa put down her fork and thought about her old life. It felt like remembering someone else's. Story? I was studying social work at Portland State University. I wanted to help families in crisis, kids who were going through tough times. Funny, right? I wanted to help people like me. That's not funny at all, David said. That's beautiful. You wanted to make a difference? I was good at it too, Lisa continued, her voice getting stronger. I had a 3.8 grade point average. I was in the honor society. The professor said I had a real gift for connecting with people, for making them feel heard. David could see the pride in her eyes as she talked about her studies. This was the Lisa she used to be, before the world knocked her down. My parents were so proud of me, Lisa went on. I was the first person in my family to go to college. My mom would call me every week to ask about my classes. My dad would tell everyone at work that his daughter was going to be a social worker, that she was going to help change the world. They sound like wonderful people, David said softly. Lisa's expression changed, and the pain came back into her eyes. They were driving home from my cousin's wedding. It was raining that night, really hard. Drunk driver ran a red light and hit them head-on. They died instantly. David felt his chest tighten. He couldn't imagine losing both parents at once, especially so young. At first, I thought I could handle it. I took 2 weeks off for the funeral and everything, then went back to classes. But I couldn't focus on anything. Every time I tried to study, I would just think about how proud they would have been to see me graduate. Lisa pushed the eggs around. On her plate, her appetite fading as the memories came back. My grades started slipping. I stopped going to some classes. I couldn't sleep at night, and when I did sleep, I had nightmares. My friends tried to help, but I pushed them away. I thought I could handle everything by myself. Grief is hard, David said. There's no right way to deal with losing people you love. By the end of that semester, my GPA had dropped to 2.1. I lost my scholarship. Without that money, I couldn't afford tuition or the dorm room. I had to move back to my parents' house, but being there just made everything worse. Every room reminded me of them. Lisa stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the busy street below. People were walking to work, starting their normal days. She remembered when she used to be one of those people, with places to go and things to do. I tried to get a job to pay for school, but I had no real work experience. The only place that would hire me was a diner downtown. The pay was terrible, and the hours were long, but I thought maybe I could save enough money to go back to school eventually. David listened quietly, letting her tell her story at her own pace. That's where I met Tony, Lisa said, and her voice got harder. He was a customer who came in every few days. He was older than me, maybe 35, and he always dressed nice. He drove a fancy car and left big tips. He seemed sophisticated, successful. Lisa turned back toward David, and he could see the shame in her face. He started asking me out. At first, I said no. I wasn't ready to date anyone. But he was persistent, and he seemed genuinely interested in my life. He would ask about my parents, about my dreams of going back to school. He said he understood what I was going through. Seemed like a good guy at first, David asked. He was charming. Took me to nice restaurants, bought me clothes, made me feel special. When I got evicted from my parents' house because I couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments, he offered to let me move in with him, said he loved me, that he wanted to take care of me. Lisa sat back down on the couch, pulling the blanket around herself like armor. At first it was good. His apartment was beautiful, and I didn't have to worry about money anymore. But slowly, things started to change. He became controlling. He didn't want me to work anymore. Said he could support us both. He didn't like my friends. Said they were holding me back, one by one. I lost touch with everyone I used to know. David felt anger building in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. What happened then? He started getting angry about little things. If dinner wasn't ready when he got home, if I talked to the cashier too long at the grocery store, if I mentioned wanting to go back to school. At first it was just yelling. Then he started throwing things. Then Lisa's voice trailed off, and she touched her left shoulder unconsciously. "He hurt you," David said quietly. Lisa nodded. Not at first. But after about 6 months, the pushing started. Then the hitting. He always said he was sorry afterward, always promised it wouldn't happen again. He would buy me flowers, take me somewhere nice, tell me how much he loved me. "That's not love," David said firmly. "That's not what love looks like." "I know that now," Lisa said. "But when you're isolated and scared and you have nowhere else to go, you start to believe that maybe you deserve it. Maybe you really are as worthless as they say you are." David wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she had never deserved any of that treatment, but he could see she wasn't finished with her story. The worst part was that he convinced me it was my fault. That if I was a better girlfriend, if I was more grateful for everything he did for me, he wouldn't get so angry. I started to believe him. Lisa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "The final time he hit me, he gave me a black eye and split my lip. I looked in the mirror afterward, and I didn't recognize myself. I looked like those women I used to see in the social work textbooks, the ones I thought I would help someday." "What made you finally leave?" David asked. "I found out he was cheating on me. After everything he put me through, after isolating me from everyone and convincing me I was lucky to have him, I found out he was seeing someone else. That's when I realized none of it had been about love. It was about control." Lisa took a deep breath before continuing. "I waited until he went to work one day. Then I packed everything I could fit in a backpack and left. I had $23 to my name and nowhere to go. Thought maybe I could stay in a motel for a few nights while I figured things out. But $23 doesn't go very far." "How long ago was that?" David asked. 3 months ago? I've been on the streets ever since. Tried to get help from social services, but there are waiting lists for everything. I applied for jobs, but it's hard when you don't have an address or clean clothes for interviews. I tried going to shelters, but they're usually full, and some of them, ... Some of them aren't safe for women alone." David shook his head. "I had no idea it was so hard to get help." "Most people don't," Lisa said. "When you have a home and a job and people who care about you, it's easy to think that help is available for everyone who needs it. But when you're actually in that situation, you realize how many obstacles there are." Lisa looked directly at David. "I never thought I would end up offering myself to a stranger for food. A year ago, if someone had told me that would be my life, I would have said they were crazy. But when you're hungry and cold and desperate, you do things you never thought you would do just to survive." The apartment was quiet for a moment. David tried to imagine what it would be like to lose everything that mattered to you, one piece at a time, until you were left with nothing but the determination to make it through another day. "Lisa," he said finally, "I'm sorry you went through all of that, and I'm glad you're here now, safe and warm." "I still can't believe you helped me," Lisa said. "Most people look right through homeless people, like we don't exist, or they cross the street to avoid us." "Maybe I just got lucky," David said. "Lucky that I was in the right place at the right time to meet someone who needed help." Lisa smiled for the first time since she had started telling her story. "You know what's funny? All those years I wanted to." 3 days had passed since that first night, and Lisa was still sleeping on David's couch. What started as one night of shelter had quietly turned into something more, though neither of them had talked about it directly. David would leave for work each morning, and Lisa would clean the apartment, do laundry, and try to make herself useful. It felt strange having a routine again. On Thursday morning, David sat at his small kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a piece of paper covered in phone numbers. Lisa was still asleep on the couch, wrapped in the blanket he had given her that first night. She looked peaceful, younger somehow, without the constant worry lines that appeared when she was awake. "Good morning," Lisa said softly, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "You're up early today." "I've been thinking," David said, holding up the paper. "About ways to help you get back on your feet? I made some calls yesterday and wrote down some information." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. This was it. David was going to help her find somewhere else to go. She had been expecting this conversation, but it still hurt. The last 3 days had been the most normal her life had felt in months. There's a social services office downtown that helps people find housing, David continued. And there's a program that helps people get back into school. I thought maybe we could go there together today if you want. Lisa stared at him. Together? I mean, if you want company? I know dealing with government offices can be overwhelming. I took the day off work. You took the day off work for me? Lisa asked, confused. David nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. I figured you might need someone to help you navigate everything. Plus, I've never really learned about what resources are available for people in your situation. I thought it might be good for me to understand better. Lisa felt tears starting again. She seemed to cry a lot around David, but they were different tears than the ones she had shed on the streets. These were tears of gratitude, of surprise that someone could be so genuinely kind. An hour later, they were sitting in a government office that smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. The waiting room was full of people who looked tired and frustrated. Lisa recognized the expression on their faces, the look of people who had been waiting for help for a long time. Lisa Rodriguez, a woman called from behind a desk. Lisa and David walked over together. Social worker Mrs. Williams was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a patient smile. She had probably seen hundreds of people like Lisa, but she treated each case like it mattered. So you're looking for housing assistance? Mrs. Williams asked, looking at the forms Lisa had filled out. Yes, and maybe information about going back to school, Lisa said quietly. Mrs. Williams nodded and started typing on her computer. I see you were a social work student before? That's wonderful. We definitely need more people in that field. She paused and looked at Lisa more carefully. I have to ask, are you currently in a safe living situation? Lisa glanced at David, unsure how to answer. I'm staying with a friend temporarily. That's good, Mrs. Williams said. Unfortunately, our emergency housing program has a waiting list of about 6 weeks right now. But there are some other options we can explore. For the next hour, Mrs. Williams explained different programs and services. There was help with job training, assistance with getting identification documents, programs specifically for people who wanted to return to college. The process was complicated, with lots of paperwork and waiting periods, but it was possible. The most important thing, Mrs. Williams said, is that you have a stable address where we can send information and where you can receive services. Do you think your current living situation will last for a few weeks while we get things started? Lisa looked at David again. He hadn't talked about how long she could stay, and she was afraid to ask. Yes, David said firmly. She has a place. To stay as long as she needs it. Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. David had just committed to letting her stay without even asking her privately first. After they left the office, Lisa was quiet during the walk back to David's car. She was processing everything she had learned, but also thinking about what David had said in there. David, she said as they got in the car, you told that woman I could stay as long as I need to. Did you mean that? David started the car and looked at her seriously. Yes, I meant it. Lisa, I know we haven't talked about this directly, but I want you to know that you're not a burden. Having you there has actually made my life better. How could having a homeless person sleeping on your couch make your life better? Lisa asked, genuinely confused. David thought about how to explain it. I guess I didn't realize how lonely I was until I wasn't lonely anymore. It's nice to have someone to cook for, someone to talk to, and watching you start to heal, seeing you get stronger every day. It makes me feel like I'm doing something meaningful with my life. Lisa was quiet for a moment. I want to contribute more. I want to help with rent and groceries and stuff. You can't just live there for free. You don't live there for free, David said. You clean, you cook, you organize my chaos. But more than that, you're my friend. And friends help each other. That afternoon, they went to the library so Lisa could use the computers to apply for jobs online. David sat next to her, helping her create an email address and format her resume. It had been so long since Lisa had thought about her skills and experience in a positive way. You have more qualifications than you think, David said, reading over her resume. 3 years of college, volunteer work, customer service experience. You're not starting from nothing. Doesn't feel that way, Lisa said. I feel like I'm starting from less than nothing. That's not true, David said. You're starting from experience. You understand what it's like to struggle, what it's like to need help. That's going to make you better at whatever job you get, especially if you go back to social work. Over the next 2 weeks, Lisa started to build a new routine. She would spend mornings looking for jobs and working on the paperwork for various assistance programs. Afternoons, she would go to the bakery where David worked and help him with small tasks, cleaning, organizing, sometimes helping customers. Mr. Miller, the bakery owner, was initially suspicious of Lisa. He was an older man who had worked hard for everything he had, and he wasn't sure about this young woman who had appeared out of nowhere. But as he watched Lisa work, he saw her dedication and her natural ability to connect with people. She's good with the customers, Mr. Miller told David one evening after Lisa had left. They seem to trust her, and she works hard. She's had a rough time, David said, but she's trying to get back on her feet. Mr. Miller nodded thoughtfully. We could probably use some part-time help in the mornings, if she's interested. Nothing fancy. Just minimum wage to start, but it's honest work. When David told Lisa about the job offer, she cried. Again. But these were happy tears. He wants to hire me, even though I've been homeless? He wants to hire you because you're a good worker and you're kind to people, David said. Past doesn't define your future, Lisa. The job at the bakery was just the beginning. Within a month, Lisa had saved enough money to buy some new clothes and to start contributing to household expenses. She insisted on paying David rent, even though he said it wasn't necessary. It's necessary for me, Lisa explained. I need to know that I'm not just taking from you. I need to know that I'm building something. David understood. Pride was important, especially when someone was trying to rebuild their life. In the evenings, they would sit in David's small living room and talk about their days, their dreams, their fears. Lisa started talking about going back to school, about finishing her degree in social work. David encouraged her, helped her research programs and financial aid options. I want to help people like me, Lisa said one night. People who have lost everything and don't know how to find their way back. You're already doing that, David said. Every time you smile at a customer at the bakery, every time you show kindness to someone who's having a hard day, you're helping. Lisa looked around the apartment that had become home. David's books were mixed with library books she had checked out. Her clothes hung in the closet next to his jackets. The refrigerator was covered with job applications, appointment reminders, a photo of them at the bakery's employee picnic. David, she said, I want you to know that you saved my life. Not just that first night, but every day since then. You gave me back my dignity, my hope, my belief that I could be more than my worst circumstances. David smiled. You saved yourself, Lisa. I just gave you a safe place to do it. 3 months after that night behind the dumpster, Lisa had a job, a plan for returning to school, and most importantly, she had hope. She still slept on David's couch, but now it was by choice rather than necessity. They had become real friends, the kind who support each other through good times and bad. The broken young woman who had offered herself for bread was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who had learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, and that one person's kindness could change everything. Lisa was building a new life, one day at a time, with the help of a friend who had seen her worth when she couldn't see it herself. 2 years had passed since that cold November night when David found Lisa behind the bakery. The seasons had changed 8 times, and so had their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. Lisa stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, adjusting her professional blazer and checking her appearance one more time. Today was special. She was giving a presentation to the city council about expanding services for homeless individuals. Her apartment was tiny, just a studio with a Murphy bed and a small kitchen, but it was hers. She paid the rent herself with money she earned at her job as a family counselor at Community Services Center. The apartment was filled with books again. Social work textbooks, psychology journals, and novels she read for pleasure. On her desk sat her diploma from Portland State University, the bachelor's degree in social work she had finished the previous spring. Next to it was a photo of her and David at her graduation ceremony, both of them grinning like they had won the lottery. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "Good luck today. You're going to be amazing. Proud of you always." Lisa smiled and grabbed her presentation materials. David still worked at Miller's Bakery, but now he was the assistant manager. His own small apartment across town. Though they still had dinner together twice a week and talked on the phone almost every day, their friendship had become one of the most important things in both their lives. The city council meeting was held in a sterile conference room that smelled like cleaning supplies and old carpet. Lisa sat with 5 other social workers and community advocates, waiting for their turn to speak. Her heart was beating fast, but it was excitement, not fear. She had something important to say, and she knew how to say it. "Lisa Rodriguez from Community Services Center," the council chairman announced. Lisa stood up and walked to the podium, looking out at the faces of the council members and the small audience of community members who had come to listen. "2 years ago," she began, "I was homeless. I lived on the streets for 3 months, sleeping behind dumpsters and in doorways, wondering if I would survive another night." The room was completely quiet. This wasn't how most presentations to the city council began. "I wasn't homeless because I was lazy or because I made bad choices. I was homeless because life hit me with more than I could handle at once. My parents, my education, my housing, and my safety. I became one of those people that others crossed the street to avoid." Lisa could see some of the council members shifting in their seats, uncomfortable with her directness. "But I was lucky. One night, a man named David Chen found me behind his bakery. I was so desperate for food that I offered him something I should never have had to offer. But instead of taking advantage of my desperation, he gave me bread, warm jacket, and a safe place to sleep." She paused, thinking about that night and how different her life might have been if David had made a different choice. David didn't just give me food and shelter, he gave me back my dignity. He treated me like a human being when I had forgotten that I was one. And because of his kindness, I was able to rebuild my life. I went back to school, got my degree, and now I have the honor of working as a social worker, helping other people who are facing the same struggles I once faced. Lisa looked directly at the council members as she continued. "I'm here today to ask you to remember that every homeless person you see is someone's daughter or son. Someone who once had dreams and hopes and plans. They're not problems to be solved or moved along. They're people who need our help, our compassion, and our respect." She went on to present her proposal for expanded services, more emergency shelters, better mental health resources, job training programs, and most importantly, programs that treated homeless individuals with dignity rather than suspicion. She finished speaking. The applause was longer and more enthusiastic than she had expected. Several council members asked thoughtful questions.
Ow!
And Lisa could tell they were really listening, not just going through the motions. After the meeting, Lisa walked back to her car feeling energized. She had done something meaningful today, used her voice to advocate for people who often didn't have a voice. Felt like coming full circle. Her phone rang as she was driving. Home, it was David. "How did it go?" he asked immediately. "I think it went really well," Lisa said. "They seemed genuinely interested in the proposals. Councilwoman Peterson said she wants to meet with me next week to discuss funding options." "That's fantastic," David said. "I knew you would be great. You want to celebrate? I could pick up some Chinese food and come over." "Actually," Lisa said, "I have something I need to do first. But let's definitely celebrate later." Lisa drove to the downtown area, to the same neighborhood where she had once lived on the streets. She parked near Central Bakery, not Miller's, but a different one, and walked around the block slowly. She wasn't sure exactly what she was looking for, but she would know it when she saw it. That's when she spotted her, a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, sitting in an alley between 2 buildings. She was thin, dirty, and had that hollow look in her eyes that Lisa remembered so well. The look of someone who had given up hope, but was still fighting to survive. Lisa approached slowly, the same way David had approached her 2 years ago. "Hi," Lisa said gently. "Are you okay?" The young woman looked up suspiciously. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "I'm not causing any trouble." "I know you're not," Lisa said. "I was just wondering if you're hungry. There's a bakery right here." and I was about to get some food. The woman's eyes flickered with interest, but she shook her head. I don't have any money, that's okay, Lisa said. I do. What's your name, Rebecca? The woman said quietly. I'm Lisa. Rebecca, when was the last time you had a hot meal? Rebecca thought about it. Maybe 4 days ago. Someone at a church gave me a sandwich. Lisa's heart ached for days. She remembered that feeling, the constant gnawing hunger that made it hard to think about anything else. Come on, Lisa said, extending her hand. Let's get you some food. They went into the bakery together. Lisa bought soup, sandwiches, coffee, and pastries. Much more food than Rebecca could eat at once, but enough to last her for a while. They sat at a small table by the window, and Lisa watched Rebecca eat with the same desperate gratitude she remembered feeling when David had fed her. Rebecca, Lisa said after the young woman had eaten most of the soup, can I ask how long you've been on your own? About 6 weeks, Rebecca said. Since my foster family kicked me out when I turned 18, they said I was old enough to take care of myself now. Lisa nodded. Another story of someone failed by the systems that were supposed to protect them. You have anywhere safe to sleep tonight? Lisa asked. Rebecca shrugged. I'll find somewhere. I always do. Lisa pulled out her business card and wrote her personal phone number on the back. Rebecca, I want you to know something. 2 years ago, I was exactly where you are right now. I was sleeping on the streets, hungry and scared, and convinced that no one cared if I lived or died. Rebecca looked at her with surprise. You were homeless. For 3 months, Lisa said. Someone helped me, a stranger who saw me as a human being instead of a problem. He gave me food and shelter and the chance to rebuild my life. And now, I work as a social worker, helping other people who are going through what we've both experienced. Lisa slid the card across the table. I want to help you the same way someone helped me. I know places where you can get services, programs that can help you find housing and job training. But most importantly, I want you to know that your life has value, that you matter, and that things can get better. Rebecca stared at the card like it was something magical. You would really help me. You don't even know me. Someone once helped me when they didn't know me either, Lisa said. And the best way I can honor that kindness is by passing it on to someone else. 2 hours later, Lisa had helped Rebecca apply for emergency shelter, connected her with social services, and given her enough food for several days. They exchanged phone numbers, and Lisa promised to check on her the next day. As Lisa drove home, she thought about the circle of kindness that had started with David's compassion 2 years ago. He had helped her. She was now helping Rebecca. And hopefully Rebecca would someday help someone else. Maybe that was how the world got better, one act of kindness at a time. When Lisa got home, David was waiting outside her building with bags of Chinese food and a bottle of sparkling cider. So, he said as they spread the food out on her small table, tell me everything about the presentation. As they ate, Lisa told him about the city council meeting, about the positive response to her proposals, and about meeting Rebecca afterward. You helped someone today, didn't you? David said, smiling. I can tell by the look on your face. I tried to, Lisa said. I hope I made a difference for her, the way you made a difference for me. David raised his glass of sparkling cider to making a difference. 2 second chances. To the fact that kindness creates more kindness, Lisa clinked her glass against his. To the man who saw worth in me when I couldn't see it in myself. To the woman who turned her pain into purpose, David replied. As they sat there, talking and laughing like the old friends they had become, Lisa reflected on how much her life had changed.